Hi Mayans, and welcome back to my channel. Or if this is your first time watching, I'm Blvd Maia, and I talk about everything in my transgender, lesbian, and asexual life that you would really like to know about but are afraid to ask. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing because it means a lot to my channel. In all honesty, this video is going to be very hard for me to make this week, but I can't stop thinking about it, and it's like if I don't put it down on video, I won't be able to get a moment's rest. Trigger warning, it is about suicide, which means it's also sure to get demonetized. I had a very low moment this week, and I wrote out my suicide letter. And yeah, that's kind of alarming. It's alarming to a lot of people. It was alarming to my friends. It was alarming to my therapist. And yes, I am in therapy, and I go every week. I'm also on an antidepressant. So it's not really a question of medication or whether I'm doing the hard work to examine this, because yes and yes. But let me first describe what led up to that moment. A couple weeks ago was my birthday, and I turned 49. And in general, I love celebrating my birthday, at least as an adult. Now, why is my birthday so important to me? And I'm glad you asked. And that's actually something we looked at in therapy this week, and a lot of things just kind of fell into place. Things I never really thought of before. All these little puzzle pieces came together. And I've talked about this in the past, but in a sense, my parents emotionally abandoned me when I was a kid. I mean, they were there for me. They were there for the surface things, though. They weren't there to ask me what was bothering me. But because I was doing very well in school, it just seemed like everything must be perfect, right? So I was getting a lot of attention for academic performance, but in some very critical ways, me as a person was being ignored. And probably nowhere was this highlighted more in my life than on my birthday. Because you see, I nearly share a birthday with one of my sisters. Her birthday is 2 days after mine, so instead of individually recognizing us, my parents would combine the two, and they would get one birthday cake and put both our names on it. That included the year I turned 21, because that was also the year my sister turned 16. She got a huge sweet 16 party, which I came home from college to attend, and they gave me a cake like kind of in between all the preparations. And I remember thinking to myself back then, this year, for sure, I'm going to have my own individual cake because my sister has a multi-tiered cake out in the living room for her sweet 16. And no. And I was really pissed. So without really meaning to, as an adult, I started placing like a whole lot of emphasis on my birthday. In fact, one day can't contain it. And this year, my friend Dev has actually started from like the first day of February, just like doing stuff for me. So thank you, Dev. That's really sweet. But I have noticed that over the years, there have been fewer and fewer people attending my birthday. And that's partly because my friend group has started contracting, at least the friends that I really want to invite. And I've gone through a lot of friend groups in my life. I think we all have if you've lived any kind of amount of life. So I came home from a week in Miami, and some of my closest friends kind of put me off for my birthday. I'd gone out with about half of my friends the day before my birthday, but some of my oldest friends said, hey, we'll catch you when you get back. And I was really looking forward to that, and then that didn't happen. In fact, it still hasn't happened with some of them. And I'll say, it is not their fault. This is not something that, caused me to want to kill myself. This all triggered a very essential trauma in my life, right? The fear of emotional abandonment, what has happened to me throughout my entire life. Because sometimes I've lost like really, really close friendships too, not just like frivolous ones. People that I thought were actually my person, that kind of level. And that is really, really painful when it happens. And I don't want to repeat of that. And that combined with the other pressures in my life just kind of led to this moment where I felt like I needed to write it down. Why I wanted to die in that moment. And I hand wrote it, and I wrote it in my journal, which is probably very appropriate because it's where I write letters to myself. Letters that express those things that really, really mean something to me, that are bothering me, whatever. And this was really, really bothering me. And it was just like there, and I couldn't let it go, and I just had to express it. And I'm not going to read it to you. I'm not even going to show it to you. But it talked about all sorts of things. It talked about a former friend who just keeps making content and saying things that make me feel like less of a person. Who basically has a position in life says that it's okay for trans women to identify as women as long as they're not identifiably trans. Because they're not appropriately feminine looking enough by her standards, and of course still have maybe their old genitalia. That alone can negate everybody's lesbianism. And just the horror show that is Twitter. If I go through my feed, I see all kinds of awful things being said about transgender women. Banning treatment for transgender kids, banning transgender people from sports entirely, things like that. This is the real human cost to even the mention of that kind of legislation. Just because that stuff doesn't pass doesn't mean it doesn't have a negative impact, a huge negative impact on our lives. Because the fact that somebody took that legislation seriously enough to even introduce it says something about how the world and how my country sees transgender people. And if you look at why transgender people commit suicide, aside, it isn't because there's something inherently wrong with transgender people. It comes down to our acceptance in society, how we're treated by society. And as somebody who's lived through many, many years of this kind of pressure, in fact, perhaps even more so because I've put myself out there in the public eye, which means I get a lot of negative feedback, I guess would be the most charitable way to put it. Sometimes it really gets to me, and sometimes I really, really need a friend to talk to about that. With like a pint of Ben & Jerry's and say, hey, let's throw on a movie and like just cry it out. There are precious few people who I would even attempt to do that with. In fact, of all my friends, there's only one, maybe two, who would even do that for me. So what I'm saying is my support net, my safety net has some huge holes in it, and I'm working on it though. And I have to say that one of them was actually the one who kind of talked me down from these feelings, who actually took the time to talk to me. By the same token, it isn't my friend's responsibility to save my life. I need to find that strength within myself as well. I need to find a reason to live within myself and figure out why it is the way I feel the way I feel. And this week in therapy, like I said, putting the dots together between my birthday and the emotional abandonment and how I feel now about my friends, the ones who are leaving, the ones who are coming and going, the ones who spend time with me, the ones who don't have that kind of time for me, the ones I can rely on to reply to my texts, the ones that I really can't rely on very much to do that. I'm taking stock. If there's something good about this is that I do see on the horizon some really strong possibilities for people who are really going to be there for me. And I'm cultivating those friendships because that's something you have to actually put some work into. You can't just assume somebody's going to be there for you because they've always been there for you. There has to be a give and take, especially in communication. So that also means that I'm pulling back. Whereas in the past, I might reach out all the time because I just felt this drive, which now I know, is fueled by my emotional abandonment issues. I can't always do that because, I don't want to be needy. So if you ever find yourself in a similar emotional situation as I was, that kind of desperate, I really, really need to talk to somebody, reach out to as many people as you can. I know I did. I told a couple friends, I really need my friends right now, really need to talk to you. And I didn't get any real response from them. So I reached out to somebody else and she did respond to me. And if I'd ever been in a situation where none of them had replied to me, that's why I have the National Suicide Hotline on my phone. That and of course Trans Lifeline would have been another great resource for me. And I would encourage any of you to avail yourself of those things if you ever find yourself in a similar position and don't have anybody you can contact. So that's it. That's my harrowing tale of woe over my birthday break. I don't even know why I'm laughing. It really isn't funny. Not at all. Gallows humor, I suppose. And I guess that's also one of my defense mechanisms. And I'm still trying. I'm still trying to connect to other people. And more importantly, I'm trying to learn to connect with myself. That is actually the most important person to connect with. My therapist would be very proud of me. If you've ever had similar feelings to the ones I experienced, and let's face it, if you're transgender, odds are you have, put them in the comments below. And also let me know how you broke yourself out of that negative spiral. As always, my social media is down below. And also, if you have a dime to spare, please consider giving to my Patreon. I very much appreciate it. And on that note, please like this video by giving it a thumbs up. Please share this video and please, please subscribe and see you around the interwebs.